I never thought that my grandson's birthday cake would be the moment I finally saw the truth. I had spent the whole night carefully decorating that cake, Ethan's favorite, a bright green dinosaur with little candy trees and tiny fondant volcanoes. My hands ached from kneading the stiff icing, but I didn't care. Seeing his face light up would be worth every second. I carried it to the party table like it was made of glass. My chest swelled with pride. But before I could even set it down fully, Samantha's voice cut through the chatter. Loud, sharp, cruel. "Oh, Margaret, don't worry. We'll use a professional cake so it doesn't look so homemade." The guests laughed nervously. I froze. My hands trembled, barely holding the tray steady. My ears burned. I glanced at Ethan, sweet little Ethan, who clutched my hand tightly, his small fingers warm and desperate, whispering, "But Grandma, I want your cake." His voice cracked, almost pleading, but Samantha had already swept in. With her manicured fingers, she snatched the bakery cake forward and positioned it dead center like a prize. The store-bought monstrosity gleamed under the lights, its perfect symmetry mocking my careful, loving mess. "We can't have it looking like a school project," she added with a little chuckle, as if that made it less vicious. I stood there, humiliated, with my ridiculous dinosaur cake awkwardly pushed aside like some embarrassing relic from the past. Guests avoided my eyes. One of Andrew's colleagues tried to fill the silence with a joke about Pinterest fails. My throat burned, my stomach twisted, but I forced a smile. Like always, they loved my cake when they were kids, back when they needed me. Samantha kept going, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Honestly, it's cute you have these little hobbies to keep you busy. We appreciate the effort, but we want everything to be polished." The word polished landed like a slap. Her tone was honeyed with venom, but behind it was something colder. Dismissal. I wasn't just a mother-in-law to her. I was a joke. A well-meaning, old woman who couldn't possibly understand the polished, curated life they were building. I tried to swallow it, to bury it like I always had. But something inside me shifted. A crack. A splinter deep in my chest. This was no longer about a cake. This was years of smiling through her sideways glances, of biting my tongue while she criticized my clothes, my house, my parenting, of watching Andrew stand there, silent. Again, I stood there, my face burning hot, my hands trembling slightly. I could feel the weight of all the parents, friends, even the caterers, their gazes flickering between pity and quiet amusement. My grandson still held my hand, trying to pull my arm back toward the table, toward my little dinosaur cake that was now pushed to the corner like some embarrassing afterthought. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. My chest tightened as if someone had slipped a steel band around my ribs. No one spoke up for me. Not Andrew. Not Samantha. Not even a polite, "Oh, but Grandma's cake looks wonderful too." Nothing. I stood there, exposed, stripped of dignity. Just another aging, irrelevant woman with too much time on her hands. The first tear threatened to betray me, but I bit it back. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Not today. Not yet. After the party, I sat at my small kitchen table, the house finally quiet. The sink dripped in rhythm, the faint ticking of the old clock on the wall filling the space where my thoughts should have been. I stared at the leftover slices of my dinosaur cake. The bright green frosting had started to sag, the tiny volcano leaning like it was exhausted too. I should have thrown it out. But I didn't. Somehow it felt like throwing away a piece of myself. I was used to being alone here. After my husband passed 5 years ago, it was just me. The house was small, old and worn, but it was mine. My world had shrunk to a few rooms and my quiet hobbies, baking, gardening, books, and most of all, Ethan, my sweet Ethan. For the last 6 years, I had taken care of him nearly every afternoon and weekend, while Andrew and Samantha built their careers, traveled for work, and attended endless charity functions. They dropped him off like a package and picked him up when it was convenient. But for me, every hour with him was precious. He filled this empty house with life, with questions, with laughter. I didn't resent them. Not at first. I understood they were busy. Careers were demanding. I knew what it meant to struggle and work hard. I had been a librarian for 30 years before retiring. I never made much, but I loved my work, loved the routine, the quiet purpose. When I retired, I imagined something softer, more dinners together, holidays filled with warmth, maybe even Samantha and I becoming close, like mother and daughter, once we both had time. Instead, they saw my free time as theirs to fill. My retirement became their convenience. My time, their schedule. I never said no, not once. Not when Samantha started referring to me as the built-in babysitter in front of her friends, laughing like it was an inside joke. Not when Andrew began showing up late for pickups, texting me casually, running behind. Keep him a bit longer? I always smiled and said of course. Because every stolen moment with Ethan made it worth it. His tiny arms wrapping around my neck, his voice calling out, "Grandma," when he saw me at the door. That was my reward. But tonight, as I scraped the leftover cake into the trash and wiped down the counter, I couldn't push down what was growing inside me. The humiliation. The quiet anger. The heavy, aching truth. They didn't love me for me. They loved what I did for them. And if I stopped being useful, I didn't finish that thought. Not yet. I folded my dish towel and switched off the kitchen light. The house creaked softly as I climbed the stairs to bed, but my mind stayed awake long into the night, playing that moment at the party over and over again. Ethan's little voice whispering, "Grandma, I like yours better." It was the only thing holding me together. The knock on my door came 2 days later. I wasn't surprised. Andrew always waited until Samantha was out of earshot before coming by. That was his pattern. Samantha swung the sword, and Andrew came behind with bandages and apologies. I opened the door. He stood there with that carefully rehearsed sheepish smile, holding a bag of takeout like it was some kind of peace offering. "Hey, Mom," he said lightly, as if nothing had happened. "Thought I'd bring you dinner." I let him in, because that's what I always did. We sat at the kitchen table, our forks scraping against the cheap takeout containers. He made small talk at first. Work was busy, Ethan was doing well in school, Samantha was under a lot of pressure. I nodded, pretending to listen, but my guard was up. Finally, his voice softened, and he looked at me with those familiar, pleading eyes. "About the other day, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about how Sam came across. You know how she is. She didn't mean to hurt you. She just gets stressed." I set my fork down carefully. "Stressed?" I repeated quietly. "Andrew, all I did was bring a cake for my grandson. She humiliated me in front of everyone." His shoulders dropped. "I know, Mom. And you're right. She shouldn't have done that." He paused, then tried to soften it again. "But you know, she's been worried. With everything going on, bills, Ethan's activities, the house, her parents' expectations. It's a lot." There it was. I waited. "And," he continued, voice lowering like it was a confession, "well, we were hoping maybe you could help ease things a little, just temporarily." I stared at him, not speaking. He pulled out his phone, opened some banking app, and turned the screen toward me like a magician revealing a trick. "We were thinking maybe if we added Sam to your credit card? Just for a little while. Strictly for things related to Ethan. School expenses, activities, you know." I stayed still. Perfectly still. The card he was talking about was the one tied to my retirement savings account. The one I had built carefully over the years. Modest, but enough to live comfortably if I was careful. Enough to stay independent. I took a slow breath. "And you need my card for that?" He leaned in. "Only because it's easier right now, Mom. With our credit scores and everything. Well, you know how things have been tight. It would mean the world to Sam. Just for a few months. You'd still have full control. Just a small extension to help with Ethan." The way he said "for Ethan," like a hook, baited perfectly. He knew where to stab. I looked at my hands, folded on the table. The same hands that held him when he was sick, that packed his lunches, that clapped for him at every school play, that held his newborn son, the grandson I loved more than anything. And in that moment, I did what I always did. I said, "All right, if it's only temporary." His face lit up. "Thank you, Mom. You're the best." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. But this time, I didn't squeeze back. It didn't take long. The charges started small. New school supplies for Ethan, a few online orders for educational apps, some clothes, reasonable things I could justify, things that fit into the for Ethan story I'd agreed to. But within weeks, the pattern shifted. I noticed the spa charges first. A luxury boutique downtown, one I knew Samantha liked to brag about to her friends. Then came the designer shoes, the handbags, the essential beauty treatments. Thousands of dollars drained in days. None of it for Ethan. None of it for anyone but her. Every time I checked the statements, my chest tightened. My hands trembled slightly as I scrolled through the growing list of transactions, each one feeling like a tiny needle pricking my skin. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. That maybe Andrew didn't know. That maybe Samantha didn't realize how fast it was adding up. But deep down, I knew better. One evening, I texted Andrew gently. "Hey, honey, just noticing some bigger charges lately. Can we chat?" The reply came back hours later. "Don't worry, Mom. Sam's just been handling a lot lately. She deserves a little pampering. We'll pay it back soon. Love you. Soon." That word felt like a lock tightening around my throat. And I still said nothing. Not yet. I kept telling myself I was being patient, that it was better to stay quiet, to give them time, that it was for Ethan. That maybe if I kept being understanding, they'd appreciate me more. Maybe they'd see my sacrifices and realize how much I was holding them up. But at night, lying awake in my quiet little house, I stared at the ceiling and let the anger quietly build. My mind whispered the same question over and over. Would they ever do this for me? And each time, the answer landed heavier. No. The love they gave me came with a price tag. And I was starting to see the balance was tipping. The day I called Mr. Hallberg, my financial advisor, my hands shook. I hadn't spoken to him since my retirement. There was never a need. I lived simply. My small pension, my modest savings, the house fully paid off. Enough to carry me through. Enough to feel safe. Until now. "Margaret," he greeted warmly, his voice steady. "It's been a while. Everything all right?" I swallowed. I need some advice." We met at his office the following morning. The moment I sat down, I felt exposed. As if saying it out loud would make everything real. I handed him a printed copy of the last two statements. He read in silence, his face calm. But I saw the small changes. The brief narrowing of his eyes, the tightening of his jaw. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but clear. "Margaret, these charges have nothing to do with your grandson." I nodded. My throat burned. "And this isn't sustainable," he added. "Your retirement fund was designed to last. But at this rate," he didn't finish. He didn't have to. "I didn't want to make waves," I whispered. "It's my family." He folded his hands and leaned forward. "That's exactly why you need to be careful. Margaret, I've seen this before. You've given them access, but they'll keep pulling as long as you let them. You need boundaries." The word boundaries felt foreign, almost foolish. I was raised to believe that family was the boundary. You protect them, you give, you sacrifice, you endure. But I also knew he was right. "What do you recommend?" I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "Start with control," he said. "Monitor everything. Keep records. And if you're willing, limit their access before this gets worse." I left his office with a growing weight in my chest, the kind of weight that felt both terrifying and oddly steady. For the first time in months, I had done something for me. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, paper and pen in hand. writing down every charge Samantha had made that didn't belong to Ethan. It was a long list. Each line I wrote felt like a thread pulling tighter in my stomach. But I kept writing, because I was done closing my eyes. The storm wasn't here yet, but I could feel the wind changing. After that meeting with Mr. Hallberg, I told myself I'd be careful, that I'd set quiet limits. But when it's your own child, your own family, those lines blur so easily. I started cutting back on myself first. Every charge Samantha made, every dollar she drained from my account, I balanced by spending less on my own needs. I canceled my gardening subscription. I stopped visiting the local bakery on Saturdays. I skipped my routine doctor's appointment, telling myself my knee wasn't hurting that bad yet. The little joys that used to fill my days were quietly pushed aside. I even pulled from my small emergency fund when I saw the monthly totals creeping higher than I could bear. Also, I wouldn't have to say no to Andrew. So I wouldn't have to risk losing my place in Ethan's life, because that's what I was really afraid of. If I spoke up, if I pushed back, I knew how Samantha would play it. She'd call me difficult. She'd say I was trying to control things. She'd tell Andrew that I was causing tension. And then, slowly, they'd start keeping Ethan away. I could see it so clearly because it had already happened in little ways before. The last few months they'd been including me less. Fewer weekend visits. Fewer spontaneous dinners. He's busy with school. We're trying to establish our own family traditions. Don't take it personally, Mom. I heard the words. I smiled and nodded every time. But I saw the pattern. I wasn't stupid. They wanted my help, not my presence. Still, I clung to whatever scraps I could get. I kept baking for Ethan, dropping off cookies at his school when Samantha would allow it. I smiled through Samantha's condescending remarks about my old-fashioned recipes and outdated tastes. I tolerated Andrew's increasingly empty reassurances that things would level out soon. But inside, something had begun to calcify, hardening. I was shrinking myself smaller and smaller just to stay in their orbit. And the cruelest part? They didn't even notice. They were too busy spending my money to see how quietly I was fading. But I saw. And every night, when I sat alone in my quiet little house, I started talking to myself. A single question whispered louder each time. How much more are you willing to lose just to keep them comfortable? It was a Thursday evening when Andrew called. Late. The kind of late where you already know it's not good news. I could hear the careful tone in his voice before he even spoke. The long, forced sigh. The fake warmth layered on top of something sharper. Hey, Mom, do you have a minute? Of course, honey, I said, even though I already felt my stomach tighten. He didn't waste much time. I know you've already been helping a lot, he began. And we're really grateful, Mom. Honestly, Samantha and I were talking, and with everything going on, it's getting a bit overwhelming. I stayed quiet, waiting. So we had an idea, he continued. Something that could really help ease some of the tension around money. We thought maybe it would make sense if you could help out with a small monthly contribution. My chest tightened. What kind of contribution? I asked softly, even though I already knew. Nothing huge, Mom. Just maybe $8,000 a month. The words dropped like a stone in my gut. I almost laughed. I wanted to. The absurdity of it. The audacity. $8,000 per month. As if he were asking me to lend him a cup of sugar. For what exactly? I finally asked, my voice calm, steady. Too steady. Well, you know, daycare, extra help for Ethan, household costs. Samantha's parents are putting a lot of pressure on us, and you've always said you wanted to support us. This would just make everything run smoother. I could hear Samantha's fingerprints all over his words, the phrases, the framing. It was her voice through him. And you're asking this because you think it's fair? I asked, still calm. Fair? Andrew hesitated. I mean, you're in a really comfortable place financially, Mom. You always said you saved for the family. And Ethan. This would benefit Ethan. There it was again. For Ethan. They always used him like a shield, like a pawn. I could feel my hands starting to shake under the table, but my voice stayed even. Andrew, I think we should sit down and talk about this in person, I said. I want to make sure we're all very clear. He hesitated, caught off guard by my tone. Oh, yeah, sure, Mom. Of course. We can talk. Just let me know when's good for you. Soon, I said quietly. Very soon. When I hung up, I sat in the dark, the phone still in my hand. I didn't cry. Not anymore. The part of me that used to sob in confusion after these conversations, that part was gone now. In its place was something colder, sharper. They were no longer asking for help. They were bleeding me dry. But now they would have to face me, face all of me for the first time. I arrived at their house on Sunday. I came alone. I always did. The moment I walked in, I could feel the air shift. Samantha was already waiting, standing in the living room like she was hosting a meeting, rather than inviting her husband's mother into her home. Her smile was brittle, stretched tight across her face. Andrew followed behind her, looking everywhere but at me. "Mom?" Samantha said, voice honeyed and cool. "Thanks for coming. We thought it would be better to discuss things calmly, face to face." I sat down at their oversized dining table, the one I helped them afford when they bought this house. My hands rested in my lap. I didn't smile. Not this time. Andrew cleared his throat. "Mom, like I said before, it's getting harder for us to balance everything. We've been under so much pressure, especially with Ethan's future. This allowance, it would take some weight off everyone." I nodded slowly. "I understand that life is expensive. But I want to be very clear. What you're asking for isn't support, it's dependency." Samantha's face hardened immediately. "With respect, Margaret, you're being dramatic." I kept my voice steady. "You've had full access to my credit for months, Samantha. That was supposed to be temporary. Instead, you've charged tens of thousands of dollars on luxury items that have nothing to do with Ethan." Her smile sharpened. "You're tracking every dollar? That feels a little obsessive, don't you think?" Andrew shifted uncomfortably beside her, but said nothing. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, but I kept my face calm. "It's called accountability." Samantha's tone turned colder, sharper. "Honestly, Margaret, we've tried to be patient with you, but you've always been a bit controlling. Everything has to be your way. You insert yourself into our life, into Ethan's life, and now you're playing victim because we ask for a little help." Her words stung, more than I expected, but they didn't surprise me. "I've given you help for years," I said quietly. "Unquestioned, unconditional help. But you've mistaken my kindness for weakness." Samantha crossed her arms. "Look, if this is too much for you, just say so. But don't make it sound like you're some kind of martyr. You wanted to be involved. You needed us." Andrew still hadn't looked at me. That's when I saw it clearly. He wasn't going to stop her. He never was. She could say anything she wanted, and he would stand there. Passive, compliant, silent. And right there, something inside me cracked open fully. I stood. "I don't need to be needed, Samantha. I love Ethan. But I won't be manipulated with him as leverage." My voice was steady, low, but every word hit like a hammer. Samantha's lips curled. "Manipulated? No one's manipulating you." "No." I took a slow breath. "Then consider this my final decision. The credit card will be canceled. There will be no allowance. If Ethan needs anything, I'll provide for him directly. You will have no further access to my accounts." Her face went pale. For a brief moment, her mask slipped, and I saw the panic flash behind her eyes. Andrew finally spoke, barely above a whisper. "Mom, don't do this." I looked at him, really looked at him. My son, standing there like a boy, too afraid to upset his wife, too weak to defend his mother. "I'm already doing it," I said softly. And then I walked out. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. I knew better than to mistake silence for peace. It was the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Not relief, but calculation. They weren't done. They were regrouping. Samantha didn't call. Andrew didn't text. I didn't reach out either. But then came the retaliation. 2 weeks later, I got a message from Andrew. "Mom, I think it's best if we take a little break from the visits for now. Ethan's been confused lately. We don't want to expose him to unnecessary tension. Unnecessary tension. My hands trembled as I read it. They were using Ethan, my Ethan, as leverage now, just as I knew they would. Not with outright threats. No, they were too careful for that. They always framed it as concern, as protecting Ethan's emotional well-being. It was always the same tactic. Punish me by cutting off access to the one person who actually loved me unconditionally. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. I understand. I won't put Ethan in the middle. Please tell him Grandma loves him very much. No accusations. No pleas. Just a steady message. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me beg. But inside, the ache was sharp, raw, almost suffocating. That night, well after midnight, my phone buzzed. I fumbled for it, still half asleep. A text from Ethan. Grandma, can I call you? I miss you. I closed my eyes and pressed my hand over my heart. His tiny voice came through the receiver moments later, whispering because he was afraid of being overheard. I don't understand, Grandma, he said softly. Did I do something bad? Mommy says we shouldn't see you because you make people upset. The words sliced through me like glass. No, sweetheart, I whispered, my voice breaking. You did nothing wrong. Grown-ups sometimes make complicated decisions, but you are my bright, perfect boy, and I will always love you. He sniffled on the other end, and I heard his small voice trying to be brave. I want to see you. I want to come to your house. I wiped my tears quietly so he wouldn't hear. We'll see each other soon, sweetheart, I promise. And when we do, we'll make another dinosaur cake, just like before. He giggled softly. With a big volcano? I smiled through the lump in my throat. The biggest one. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness for a long time, staring at nothing. My chest burned with grief. But beneath it, something colder, sharper was growing. They thought they could control me by cutting off what I loved most. But they were wrong. They had just shown me exactly how far they were willing to go. And now I would be just as ready. I didn't act right away. That's what they expected. A mother desperate, emotional, willing to beg. I gave them silence instead. But behind that silence I moved. I started small, discreet. I opened a custodial account in Ethan's name. Quiet, legal, protected. Any gifts, any support I wanted to give him would go directly into that account now. No more passing through Andrew. No more giving Samantha any access. My financial advisor handled it with the same calm professionalism he always had. No one but you and Ethan will have access, Mr. Hallberg assured me. This is completely locked down, I nodded. Good. I want this airtight. The next step came even quieter. I started gathering every piece of documentation I could find, every transaction Samantha made using my card, every text message, every bank statement, every conversation Andrew had tried to frame as just a little more help. I printed them all, sorted them neatly, and locked them into my small fireproof safe. I wasn't planning to confront them with it yet. But if this was the game they wanted to play, I would be ready. Let them think I was shrinking. Let them believe I was too old, too soft, too tired. They didn't realize that quiet doesn't mean weak. That was a lesson they were going to learn soon. In the evenings, I still baked, still gardened, still sat by the window, watching the small sparrows land near the feeder outside. My routine never changed. On the surface, everything looked the same. But inside me, everything was shifting. I wasn't fighting for their approval anymore. I was fighting to take back my place. It was late autumn when the shift inside me solidified. The trees outside my house stood bare, stripped of their leaves, exposed, vulnerable, yet still standing. I was done waiting. I had spent too many years excusing their behavior. telling myself that Andrew was under pressure, that Samantha was just high-strung. I had explained away every slight, every manipulation, every moment. They reduced me to a role: babysitter, wallet, housekeeper, nothing more. But now I saw it for what it was: control. They didn't just want my help. They wanted my silence, my obedience, my complete erasure, and I had allowed it. I had traded pieces of myself, again and again, hoping to keep my place in their perfect little family. But each time I gave, they only wanted more. No more. I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I had agreed to hand over my credit card months ago, and I made a decision. I will not be blackmailed with my own love for Ethan. I pulled out my binder, the one I had carefully filled over the last few months with receipts, bank statements, and notes. Every dollar Samantha had siphoned, every request Andrew had made, every manipulative conversation I had documented. And I began to organize it, not just for myself anymore, for the possibility of legal action. I wasn't naive. I knew this could get uglier. Samantha would not go down without a fight. She'd weaponize Ethan if she had to. She'd twist every narrative to make me look controlling and unstable. But this time, I would not walk into that battle unarmed. As I flipped through the pages, my phone lit up beside me. Another text from Andrew. "Hey, Mom, just checking in, hope you're okay. Sam says Ethan's been emotional lately. Maybe some space is still best?" A carefully wrapped threat, dressed up as concern. I stared at it for a long time. Then I did something I had never done before. I didn't reply. I let them sit in their silence. Because I had work to do. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about anger anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity and protecting the only person who truly mattered. I never expected the call to come from him. It was late afternoon when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. The number was unfamiliar, but something told me to pick up. "Margaret, this is Richard Parker." I froze. Dr. Parker, Samantha's father. We had barely spoken beyond polite greetings at holidays. He always seemed distant, reserved, the quiet observer, while Samantha orchestrated every family gathering like a performance. "I hope you don't mind me calling," he continued, his voice calm but serious. I've been hearing things, and I wanted to speak to you directly." I said nothing at first. My guard was up. Why now? Why him? He cleared his throat, as if carefully choosing his words. "Samantha isn't being honest with you, Margaret. She hasn't been for a long time. The spending, the debts, the constant reliance on your finances. It's worse than you know." My breath caught. He wasn't here to defend his daughter. He was here to confirm everything I already knew, and worse. "I've tried to talk to Samantha about this privately," he said quietly, "but she refuses to listen. Andrew enables her, and frankly, it's not sustainable. I've reached my limit, Margaret. I love my grandson. I care about this family. But I won't watch them drag you down while hiding behind Ethan." His voice softened. "You've carried them long enough." I sat there, gripping the phone, trying to process what was happening. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because I see where this is heading," he said, "and because you're the only one acting like an adult in this situation." There was a long pause. Then his tone shifted, firm and steady. "Margaret, you need to protect yourself legally. You need to take control of your finances, your rights as Ethan's grandparent, and your future. And if you're willing, I can help." I blinked, stunned. "Help? How?" "My firm has excellent legal counsel," he said. "People who specialize in exactly these kinds of cases: financial coercion, elder exploitation, custodial rights. I'll cover the costs. My daughter may be stubborn, but I won't let her destroy you, or Ethan." The weight of his words pressed into my chest. After months of isolation, of feeling cornered and alone, his offer felt like a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to hope. "All right," I said softly. "Let's talk." Because now, I wasn't just preparing quietly. Now I had allies. And Samantha had no idea the ground was shifting beneath her feet. The following weeks moved carefully, deliberately. Richard connected me with his attorney, a sharp, composed woman named Evelyn Shaw. From the moment we sat down together, I knew I was in capable hands. "This kind of case," Evelyn said softly, tapping her pen against a thick folder of my documentation, "is more common than you think, Margaret. Financial abuse often starts like this, family taking advantage under the guise of love." I swallowed hard. I let it happen. "No," she corrected me firmly. "You trusted them. That's different." We spent hours going through everything. I handed over my files, my notes, my recordings, every conversation I had quietly documented, every transaction Samantha had made under the promise of helping with Ethan. Evelyn laid it out clearly: the financial exploitation, the emotional manipulation, the pattern of control through access to Ethan. "This is strong," she said finally. "We're going to create full legal protections, financial independence, custodial access rights, and conditions to prevent any future coercion." Her voice was steady, but her eyes softened when she looked at me. "You've carried too much, Margaret. This stops now." With Richard's support, the legal documents were drafted swiftly. We created a new trust to protect my assets completely. All access that Samantha and Andrew previously had was revoked. The custodial account for Ethan was fully secured. No one but me and Ethan's court-appointed guardian, should anything happen to me, could touch it. But perhaps the most important document was the custodial visitation agreement Evelyn prepared. "They'll fight this," Evelyn warned me, "especially Samantha. But you have leverage now." I nodded. I'm not scared anymore. I had been scared for too long, scared of losing access to Ethan, scared of confrontation, scared of being cast aside completely. But fear had made me smaller, and I was done shrinking. As we finished the paperwork, Evelyn leaned back and studied me carefully. "Margaret, are you ready for the confrontation?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said. "I want them to see me standing on my own feet. This time, I'm not walking into their house as a mother desperate for approval. I'm walking in as a woman who's taking back what's hers." The meeting was held at Evelyn's office. Neutral ground. Controlled. I arrived early. Richard was already there, calm as always, quietly sipping his coffee. He nodded at me in silent support. Just his presence steadied my breathing. 15 minutes later, they arrived. Samantha swept in first, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, her chin lifted high as if she were walking into a courtroom she had already won. Andrew followed, pale and stiff, avoiding my eyes. Evelyn greeted them politely, her tone professional but cool. "Thank you for coming. Let's sit." The conference table felt massive. Samantha sat directly across from me, leaning back in her chair, her arms crossed, her thin smile already condescending. "So," she began lightly, "what exactly is this about? Another misunderstanding?" Evelyn opened the folder slowly, deliberately. "Mrs. Parker," she said evenly, "this meeting concerns financial misconduct and the ongoing manipulation of my client, Mrs. Margaret Ellis." Samantha's eyes narrowed. "Manipulation?" she repeated, feigning offense. "Are you serious? We've done nothing but include Margaret in our family. She offered to help. We never forced her." Andrew squirmed but stayed silent. Evelyn remained composed. "Let's go through the records." Page after page slid across the table. Bank statements, transaction histories, the detailed list of luxury purchases, dates, amounts, locations. It was impossible to argue with. Samantha's face flushed as she flipped through the evidence. "This is exaggerated," she snapped. "These were family expenses, household needs. Luxury handbags?" Evelyn asked, her voice calm but cutting. "Spa retreats?" Boutique designer items? Exclusive membership clubs? Samantha's voice raised. I work hard. I deserve some. You deserve nothing from my client, Evelyn interrupted sharply. You were given temporary access under the promise of supporting Ethan. Instead, you exploited that trust. Samantha shot a furious look at Andrew, who now sat frozen, his hands trembling slightly. I finally spoke, my voice low but steady. You've called me controlling for years, Samantha. You've accused me of interfering, of being dramatic, of not knowing my place. I leaned forward, my voice sharper now, but I do know my place. And it is not beneath you. For the first time, Samantha had no immediate retort. Evelyn continued smoothly. From this moment forward, all financial access is revoked. Legal protections have been filed to safeguard every remaining asset. Additionally, we've submitted documentation for a formal custodial visitation agreement to ensure my client's continued relationship with her grandson, without interference. Samantha's mouth opened, but Richard finally spoke. Don't even start, Samantha. His voice was cold, steel running through every word. You've dug this hole long enough. You either respect these terms or prepare for a full legal investigation into financial exploitation. That will not end well for you. The silence that followed was thick. Andrew finally lifted his head, eyes wet. I never wanted this, Mom, he whispered. I held his gaze. You allowed it. Samantha's lips tightened, but she said nothing. She knew. She was cornered. Evelyn tapped her pen lightly against the table. Shall we move forward with the agreement? For the first time in months, I felt it. Not anger, not even triumph. Control. I nodded. Yes. Let's proceed. For a moment, I thought Samantha might try to regain control. She opened her mouth as if to launch into another defense, some sharp, rehearsed monologue, but before she could say anything, Andrew broke. It started with a shallow breath, then his head dropped into his hands, and finally, the words came tumbling out. I can't do this anymore, he whispered, his voice thin, cracking. I can't pretend this is normal. Samantha's head whipped toward him. Andrew! But he didn't stop. His hands trembled as he spoke, almost like the weight of years had finally landed on his shoulders all at once. She's right, Sam. Mom's right. We've been taking from her for years. We kept telling ourselves it was for Ethan, for the family, but we bled her dry. His voice grew louder, choked with guilt. I let you control everything. I let you make me believe she owed us. And I stood there and said nothing while you humiliated her over and over. Samantha's face drained of color. Don't you dare put this on me. But he kept going. Who else am I supposed to put it on? His voice cracked into a raw whisper. You? Me? Both of us? I stood by while you treated her like nothing but a servant. The room was painfully quiet now. I sat still, calm, watching my son finally face the rot that had been growing for years. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered. I should have protected you. I should have stood up to her. I should have stopped this a long time ago. For the first time in this entire ordeal, I saw a glimpse of the boy I raised, the boy who once clung to my hand, afraid of thunderstorms. The boy who trusted me with his whole heart. But that boy had been gone for a long time. And the man sitting before me now was broken. By weakness, by fear, by years of enabling. I didn't speak. I let him sit in the silence of his own guilt. Samantha's hands balled into fists, her voice low, vicious now. You're pathetic. Richard stepped in before anyone else could respond. His voice was cold, steady. If either of you contest this agreement, you won't like what comes next, he warned. You've been lucky so far, Samantha, very lucky. But you've crossed every legal and moral line, Samantha's eyes darted, calculating. She was cornered. But even in defeat, she refused to surrender fully. She said nothing. She simply sat there, her silence sharper than any words. Evelyn pushed the documents forward. Sign. Andrew reached first. And slowly, reluctantly, Samantha followed. The deal was sealed. I stood from the table, calm, composed. "We're done here," I said quietly. And for the first time, I felt free. The paperwork was done. The signatures in place. The power dynamic shifted forever. But the aftermath wasn't clean. It never is. For days after that meeting, the calls started coming. Not from Samantha, of course. She went silent, stewing in her anger, no doubt spinning a narrative where she was the victim. No, it was Andrew who kept calling. Leaving messages I didn't return. Messages that swung wildly between guilt, sorrow, and quiet desperation. "Mom, please. I know I let you down. I know I messed up. But can't we just try to fix things? For Ethan's sake?" Samantha's furious, but I don't want to lose you. I don't want Ethan to lose you. "Mom, please don't shut me out completely." I listened to every message, every word, and still, I said nothing. Because the truth was, I didn't need to say anything. The damage was already done. Richard called me a few days later to give me the final update. Samantha and Andrew had agreed, reluctantly, to enter financial counseling under legal supervision as part of the settlement Evelyn crafted. If they refused, Richard would pull every ounce of family support they still relied on. "They know they have no leverage left," he said simply. "And frankly, they should be grateful the consequences aren't worse." I didn't reply. I only nodded. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear. This wasn't about revenge. It never had been. It was about no longer being trapped in the web they spun around me for years. And most of all, it was about Ethan. The first weekend after the legal dust had settled, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, there he was, my sweet boy, holding a small backpack, his eyes wide and nervous. "Mommy said I could stay for the weekend," he said softly. "If you want me to." I knelt down, my throat tight. "Of course I want you to, sweetheart." His little arms wrapped around my neck, and for the first time in months, I could breathe again. Really breathe. Behind him, Andrew stood awkwardly at the curb, watching, waiting, but not daring to approach. He knew. We both knew. From now on, everything would happen on my terms.